Hello, everybody, and welcome to my live show. A bit later than normal tonight. We've had a few technical issues getting my guest on tonight, but I'm thrilled to say she's actually here and she's made it. So I'm really excited to talk to her tonight. Welcome to everybody. Thanks ever so much for watching the show. Obviously, welcome to all of you that are watching this on replay as well. Those of you that don't know and have never sort of seen me before, I'm a romantic suspense author. And each week I do one of these live behind the scenes shows, and I get guests in from all walks of life, and we have a little chat, give you the opportunity to ask them any questions you like, and it sort of ends up really just kind of being a lot of fun. So as I advertised, tonight my guest is a lovely lady called Phyllis Woodfine, and she is an osteopath, but she also is qualified in Pilates and Tai Chi. She's done an incredible amount of things. I read her bio and I was completely blown away. So tonight, obviously, if you want to ask her any questions, just pop your questions in the comments and she'll do her best to answer them for you. And that's what we're going to do tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Phyllis to the show. And, one of these days, I say this every week. There we go. Hi, Phyllis.
Hello. Hi, Anne-Marie.
You're live. You got here.
Gosh, yeah. Felt like it was never going to happen, but yes, here finally.
So how are you? Have you had a good day?
I have, yes. I been with the family most of the day. Had a quick emergency visit. Going to see a patient earlier on. One of my patient's mothers needed some help. And so I went to try and sort that out, because the worst thing to be is to have a whole bank holiday weekend of not feeling great. So yeah. So, but it's been a good day until the technology problems.
Until the technology. I know, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, I've been doing this show since November, I think, and every week I get something wrong. So don't worry about it. It's absolutely fine. That's what live shows are all about.
This is true.
So I'm just going to have a little quick read of the information that you sent me here. So you started out as a building surveyor. So you've kind of gone into a completely different area now, haven't you?
Yeah, although they're all structures, I suppose.
Yeah, true.
Yes. No, I started off doing building. I worked in environmental health, but I was always on the housing side of things. And that's where my interest had been. But before that, as a teenager and sort of like younger, I'd done loads of sports. So I'd actually seen physios and osteopaths when I was doing sport. So I always had that in the background. But as I said, went down the route of the surveying, really enjoyed it. And then just got to the point where I thought, do you know what? I'd always really been interested in the health side of things. So I did aromatherapy, reflexology and massage. I qualified in those, and then finally thought, actually, osteopathy was the real love. Let's go for that. And so decided to retrain and do the osteopathy, and haven't looked back. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I am a fan of osteopaths.
Good.
I have over the years, I have a long-term neck and back injury from a car accident almost 20 years ago now.
Right.
Over the years, I've had various different treatments: chiropractic, osteopath, massage, whatever, you name it, I've had it.
Yeah.
And I currently have a very nice osteopath who I see sort of once every month or so. And I often wonder with osteopaths whether it's kind of like when you do that thing that makes everything crack, whether there's some kind of like real enjoyment in doing that to people.
A sadistic tendency.
Yes.
Yeah, I think maybe there are with some. I don't know. Not with me. No, I mean, you don't always have to, as you probably know when you've had it, you don't always have to do the releases, but sometimes they're definitely are needed. But yeah, don't get any real, because I hate having it done to my neck. So I can imagine how other people don't particularly like it. So, you know, I don't get a lot of pleasure from doing it. But if it's needed, go for it. We do.
Yeah.
It's really, you know, it's quite gentle, and often people think of it that it's like the bones cracking, but it's not. It's just like cavitation. It's air. It's a sort of like the sound of the air releasing around the joint and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, we have got a couple of comments coming, but it's actually two people that are really talking to each other rather than us. But I will put them on screen so they feel loved. So my husband Mark has said hello. One of my friends says that I have a pain in the neck, which is my husband. And my husband has responded and said that his friend is the pain. So, like I said, they're kind of having their own conversation. So we'll leave it, but I don't want them to feel like we're ignoring them. So
no. Right. Hi, Sean. Hi, Mark.
Yeah. Actually, they do. Well, both my husband and his friend do a sort of a lot of running, so they're often complaining of aches and pains and things like that. Yeah. And I'm, for my sins, training for a triathlon at the moment.
Oh wow! Impressive.
Yeah, only a baby triathlon.
Any triathlon is impressive, definitely.
But I'm just starting to get sort of the startings of shin splints in my left sort of shin.
Right.
So
yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean things like shin splints. It's real. You really need to look at your shoes. Make sure that your shoes are okay if you're having those looked at. Also, making sure that you do stretch out the calves, the deep muscles in the calves, and also your quads at the front. And it's just making sure that everything's nice and stretched. And also sometimes looking at your running style and thinking about that, because sometimes if you're overpronating, you might put a little bit more of a stretch through those. You've got lots of muscles, which I won't go into, but like tibialis anterior. There's various muscles at the front of the legs, and those are the ones that give you some of that problem, that feeling of it being tight at the front. So it's really like looking at all of those things, making sure that you're really in balance. But your osteopath, I mean, if you go and see him, he can mention it, because sometimes people don't mention it because they think that as osteopaths we don't deal with that, whereas we literally go from head to toe. And often sort of like we'll look at the whole body. So there's more than likely something that he can do to help you with that, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things you mentioned to me, actually. And I have to admit, until I started seeing an osteopath, I was thinking that all they did was manipulate backs. And that was one of the comments you made, that an osteopath doesn't just look at your back. So I know I've had cranial osteopathy before.
Yeah.
Which is a slightly different discipline, isn't it? I mean, do you do that? Do you sort of have a preference as how you treat people? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I use that as well. Cranial osteopathy, it depends on whether or not you're talking about craniosacral therapy, which is slightly different. Craniosacral therapists aren't osteopaths, whereas there are osteopaths who use cranial osteopathy, which is just another tool of the many tools we've got. So with osteopathy, you might use cranial or the involuntary mechanism. It's the same thing. You might use functional treatments, which works on the fascia, and there are a number of different disciplines within that. Soft tissue massage, which is a bit different to having your beauty massage. It's a little bit deeper. And then you've got what are called METs, muscle energy techniques, and they're ways of stretching and relaxing the muscle, as well as the H3Ts, which are the cracking that people associate with us and chiropractors. So there's quite a lot of tools in the toolbox, and some osteopaths will be purely what they call structural, so they will just use sort of like the H3Ts and maybe soft tissue and articulation, which is just basically gently moving the joints and trying to increase their range of movement. But then you'll get others who work purely cranially, and they'll be treating maybe working with pediatrics, so working with young people. But you don't have to just treat babies with cranial work, pediatrics and stuff. Again, they might work with pregnant people, so women who are pregnant, who have got a little bit of discomfort. You might a bit of a back pain, might literally get a little bit of swollen legs, that sort of things. They can help them feel a little bit more comfortable with the pregnancy, during the pregnancy. So it's not treating the pregnancy as such, it's treating mum and and how she's feeling through that pregnancy. So
it's a huge range of things, isn't it, really? I mean, what's the difference? And I'm sure you get asked this a lot. Obviously you've got to my mind, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, you've got sort of 3 different disciplines when you're talking about rehabilitation, or when you talk about injuries, or when you're talking about back or neck problems. So you've got a physio therapist who you can generally see on the NHS if you're lucky. You've got obviously the osteopath, and you've got the chiropractor. What's the distinct difference between the 3, and how would somebody know which one they needed to see?
Ultimately, you can see any of them. It's really lines are blurring a little bit now as to the difference, but traditionally it used to be that with the physiotherapists, they tended to be mainly within the NHS, and they tend to do more, give you exercises, and certainly not do lots of hands-on treatment. And that's probably been even more so the last 10-15 years, how that's changed a little bit within the NHS. Chiropractors, they would tend to work mainly on the spine,
right? Okay.
Not so much on the arms and legs, so on the peripherals, and they tended to use less soft tissue, so they tended to do a lot more of the cracking and less of the soft tissue and the lead up to it. And then osteopaths would do soft tissue and use the HVTs and other techniques, but they would also work on the peripherals,
right?
So on the arms and the legs as well, and as I said, head to toe. But that's really, as I said, blurring a bit now. You will get chiropractors who do quite gentle work, and don't necessarily do all the HVTs, so the clicking. You'll get osteopaths who do more of the clicking, but also some who do the gentle work. And certainly with physiotherapists, you get a lot more private physiotherapists now, and they will work more similarly to how the osteopaths work.
Right, okay.
Osteopaths will also sometimes give you exercise and stuff. Certainly I do. I give a lot of exercises to people. So from that rehabilitation part of it. And probably one of the big differences used to be, and it's probably still a little bit, is with the training. Part of osteopathic training is we're trained to diagnose. So we do a lot of, it's 4 years if you do it full time, or 5 years part time. So it's a long degree. So we do a lot of clinical testing to work out what's happening with the person, and whether or not it's something that we can be treating, or whether or not we need to refer them on to somebody else. So it's part of our training to diagnose, to be able to diagnose. And it never used to be so much that physiotherapists within the NHS, they tended to be given a diagnosis. So you'd go and see your GP, and your GP might say you've got tennis elbow, and right, so I'm going to now refer you to the physio for them to treat that. Whereas, as I said, you don't have to go and see your GP to go and see an osteopath, and they will look, and if they think it's something that's a little bit more serious, that might be something systemic, so it might be that you've got bowel problems, or you've got whatever, whatever it tends to be, and then they would refer you back to your GP. So that's part of our training.
So, and it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I don't know obviously how you work, but my osteopath, he has probably the best way to describe it is a holistic approach. So when obviously I first went to him, and we talked about the reason I was there, so the injury and the neck and the back issue, he also spent a lot of time and continues to spend a lot of time on so lifestyle and diet and kind of various other things, looking at the whole, not just saying, okay, this is the injury, I need to press here, pull here, poke here and yank here. It's like, okay, this is the injury, but how about if we look at this, or how about if we look at that, and what do you eat and what do you drink, and that kind of thing. And that's quite interesting as well, because obviously we're all guilty of just sort of kind of going about our lives and doing our things, and not necessarily looking after ourselves as well as we should until something goes wrong. So I found that quite interesting, was that and he has I mean, don't get me wrong, he has various areas of interest that he looks at, and that those are a part of that. But I mean, do you sort of do a holistic approach as well, or do you sort of tend to just function literally on the issue that's there, or how do you sort of work?
I try and work sort of like quite holistically. As osteopaths, that's really part of our training. So there's various tenets that I won't go into, so principles that we work by, but one of those being that the body is a unit, so that we don't necessarily look at one area. So if you come in and you say you have got, as tennis elbow's an easy one to say. If you come in and say I've got a pain in my elbow, I had seen my GP, they said it was tennis elbow, or I've spoken to a friend and they said it was tennis elbow, similar to what they had. I would look at your elbow, but I wouldn't just look at your elbow. I'd be looking at how do you move your shoulder? How do you move your back? What's happening with that? What's happening with your hips? Looking at all those things. What do you do on a daily basis? What do you do for a living? What is your, what's your nutrition? How are you moving? How are you sleeping? So all of those things will come into it. If there's an injury to an area, then we also need to know, how are you going to rehabilitate that? What are you doing to help it? Because obviously, you need good nutrition to try and help tissues to heal themselves. So, as an osteopath, that's what we should be looking at. That's certainly what I teach my students to do, and that's what I do as well. Yeah, definitely.
I think for a long time, I went to a chiropractor, and that was primarily because at the time that was who I think my mum was seeing and my sister was seeing, and it just happened. And it was a long time. Before I sort of thought about going to an osteopath, and I have to say, for me, it has been the most effective treatment. I've seen a number of different osteopaths. The one that I'm with at the moment, I've been with for quite a while now. And it has been, definitely the most effective treatment. So we've got a great question coming actually from one of my friends, Rona. So I'm going to pop this, I'm just going to get rid of our name so that you can see it properly. I'm going to pop this on the screen. So she says, my daughter, who is 17, suffers from chronic pain. She's in pain 24 hours a day. She also has chronic fatigue, so struggles with life daily. Do you have any advice?
Right, yeah, that's a really, really hard one. Yeah, I mean, there are things that can do, sort of like talking about the involuntary mechanism, the cranial treatment, that might be something that's quite beneficial for somebody who's suffering from chronic fatigue, ME, that sort of thing. So it's quite a gentle form of working through there. With the chronic fatigue, they'll also get pain because they're not using their muscles as much. So it's getting, work done to that. So gentle work to get blood back into the area, to get those muscles working a little bit more. So doing things like gentle articulations, which I was talking about beforehand. So that's literally moving the joint within its range of movement and trying to increase that slightly. And that gets blood flow back to the area. So certainly there are things that the osteopath can use. You get some osteopaths who use, I think it's like the Perrin method, which is another method that I won't go into, but it's using sort of like a lot of functional and fascial work within the treatment. And again, going back to what I said beforehand about nutrition, looking at nutrition and thinking about, making sure that you're really well hydrated when you can, and trying to get little and often food, because I know with chronic fatigue sometimes again they don't feel like eating very much. So those are the things that you need to look at. Also very much mindfulness and thinking about the way you think about pain and how you move through it. So there are some osteopaths who will bring that in a little bit more, but also a lot of the talking therapy, so CBT, NLP, that sort of thing, are worth looking into, but certainly looking into mindfulness. There's been lots of positive work with that. So as osteopaths, there's definitely things you can do to help that along, and it's real working both with your patient and with them, and going when you're not in the really bad phase of it and trying to help.
So, I mean, I know from first hand, because obviously I know Rona and I know the family. So I know that this is a real, it's a really difficult time for them. And obviously I know that their daughter is really struggling. Yeah. So from what you're saying, there would definitely be something you think that an osteopath could help and advise with. I mean, I was interested in what you said about articulating the joints and making sure that the blood flow is going, back to the right place. I mean, is that something that you've sort of used and has been effective before?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I've treated a few patients that have had ME and chronic fatigue, and it's just working. It's different for each person, because definitely, you know, with that condition, unfortunately, there is no typical way of things going. So it really is different with each individual patient, and that's why osteopathy is quite a good thing for it, because we don't treat the condition, we treat the patient. So we're looking at what's happening with the patient and how can we help them. So if it's part of them not moving teas, it's a really gentle way of getting in there, and you can do as much or as little, but helping that person to get those muscles moving further. There's also visceral stuff, so you work around the diaphragm, the abdomens that are in the muscles and the organs that are in the tummy. There's gentle work that you can do with that, and as I said again with the IVM, there's things that can help just to calm the system down. So an osteopath would look at your friend's daughter, and they would be treating them as opposed to the condition and seeing what's needed for them. Yeah,
that's really interesting, and maybe that's something they'll look into. I don't know whether they have or not previously, but certainly it's interesting to know that, like we said at the beginning of the show, you tend to think, an osteopath is someone you go to when you've hurt your back, but it really isn't. It's about so much more than that. Sandra's popped in. Sandra tends to come along every week, so it's great to see you, Sandra. You said you're not very late, because we were a bit late going live, actually. Phyllis, bless her, had a few technical issues, so you haven't missed a huge amount. I'd be interested to know, Sandra, whether you've ever seen an osteopath or anything like that, and if you've got any sort of stories or experiences that you want to share with us, or any questions you want to ask Phyllis while she's here. So Rona's commented, that's true with the dehydration and lack of wanting to eat. She does struggle with joint pain too. Really good advice, and we'll look into this.
Fabulous. Good luck with it. As I said, look on the GOSC, the General Osteopathic Council's website. All osteopaths have to be registered. If they're calling themselves an osteopath, they have to have trained at a college that's recognised by the GOSC. It's a protected name, so there's an act, the General Osteopathic Act. So there's that means that we can't call ourselves one if we haven't trained at recognised colleges. So if they go onto their website, put their postcode in, they can find osteopaths that are in their area, and then best thing to do is to give them a ring and have a chat and tell them what it is and whether or not they think it's something they can help with.
Yeah.
So
I think
hopefully that will, cross fingers.
Yeah, exactly. I think certainly for me, and obviously my condition is nothing like obviously Rona's daughter, but for me, I'd got to the point where it's like, I will try anything, and so that's I think sometimes you kind of have to get to that point maybe before you before you kind of really hit on the thing that's going to help. And obviously with you in particular as well, we did touch on it at the top of the show. You have done Pilates and Tai Chi for falls prevention. So obviously you're moving into slightly other areas as well. And I know Pilates is obviously great for relaxation and obviously stretching everything and kind of making everything move. I mean, obviously, if you want to elaborate, that would be great. But I was also interested in this Tai Chi for falls prevention. That was a bit sort of not sure what that means.
Right, yeah. So I've done the Pilates. I qualified in Pilates with the particular form that I do is the APPI, the Australian Physiotherapist Pilates Institute. And the reason why I did it with them is because they're very much clinically based. So they look at the clinical side of things and link it with that. So it's probably about 7 years ago, something like that, that I did that. 6-7 years ago, because I'd always done Pilates. I'd done it for many years, and a lot of my patients, I would often say to them, be quite good for you to go to a class. And then they'd come back and they'd be doing stuff, and I'd question them over it a little bit, and didn't they correct you and stuff, and realise that they were in these huge classes that actually didn't really benefit them. So that made me then decide to do it so that I could give a little bit more one-to-one and give exercise based on that from a position of knowledge. That's really why I did it. Along with that, I actually I've got two extreme interests. So one's adolescence in sports, and the other is older patients. So I've treated a lot of older patients who've got things like osteoporosis, arthritis in areas. And one of the things as we're getting older, that are there's an increase in us possibly falling and causing damage at that point. So it's really, Tai Chi is a great way to get us moving. Now the difference is that certain forms of Tai Chi will require you really getting low and bending down into some of the forms, and as Westerners, we're not necessarily as agile as, say, if you look at some of the other populations, and haven't been used to doing those sort of movements. So the Tai Chi for falls prevention is particularly aimed at older populations and helping them so that they've got a little bit more balance, and are still doing movement that actually makes them feel a little bit more stable. And if you move, it makes a big difference. I mean, exactly as I was saying with the chronic fatigue, doesn't want to move, but you need to, because you need to keep those muscles working, you need to get the blood flowing. Exactly the same as you get older. If you've got a bit of arthritis in the knees, even if it's wear and tear, or you've got rheumatoid arthritis, often it's like, well, I don't want to move because it's too painful. But actually, because you're not moving, those muscles and the blood flow doesn't get around, so the muscles start to deteriorate a little in that, they get a little bit more wasted. So it then makes it harder to move. So what you need to do is to do the movement that initially will be a little bit uncomfortable or painful, but you've got to work through that. If it's rheumatoid arthritis, you don't work through its inflammatory stage. But if it's wear and tear, which most of us will start to, once we get past 25, it starts going the other way. All right, maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit older. But yeah, so really what we need to do is to keep moving. So the Tai Chi for falls prevention is really doing slow movements, doing those movements that aren't deep bending into there, but are getting them steady and balancing a little bit more. And again, with the Pilates, exactly the same thing. It's really good for challenging your balance a little bit, just showing you how to move and support yourself. So that's really why I did a course in that, and have found, when I give some of those exercises to some of my older patients, it really, really benefits them.
And I have a bit of a confession. I've got a couple of comments from Sandra coming, which I'm going to pop up in a second. But I do have a bit of a confession actually with my neck and my back problems over the years. It will go from being, it hurts every day, but it will go from being manageable to being chronic. Yeah. And for years and years and years and years, everyone told me, oh, you need to get your core sorted. You need to strengthen your core. You need to do this, that, and the other. I was like, oh, for goodness sake. Anyway, as I mentioned earlier, I'm training for this triathlon. So since October, I've been going to the gym regularly. Yeah. And the last couple of times I've been to the osteopath, he's like, oh, your neck's not too bad today. I'm like, yeah. So I do have a bit of a confession. I'm not the best at doing what I'm told to do, but having now spent, sort of 4 or 5 months working on obviously strength and posture and fit, whatever, I can feel the benefits. So I completely echo what you've said there about, movement and, just sort of obviously, kind of doing what we're told, really.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, good on you, though. Good.
Okay, so Sandra, now Sandra's got sort of pain issues and various other bits and pieces, unfortunately. So she said she's not used an osteopath. She's seen a chiropractor and various physiotherapists. She's using mindfulness, hydrotherapy, meditation and stretches taught by Mineral Hospital to manage my pain, but she's listening with interest. And then she also says she's following an anti-inflammatory diet. Right. But for sort of Sandra's benefit, how beneficial is, the sort of anti-inflammatory diet? Is that something that you've kind of used and come across and something that you've sort of worked with?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I'll give a little bit of nutritional advice, but not a great deal. Usually if I think somebody needs lots of information, I will send them to a nutritionist. I think, I've got many qualifications. That's not one of them. but I do know a bit about it. But yes, certainly one of the things with arthritis, that sort of thing, is that you want to try and be less inflamed, the less inflammatory types of foods. And there are some things that can irritate. For example, with arthritis, tomatoes is one of the things that can cause irritation to people. They often say try and avoid eating foods that will sort of like glue things up, clog them up. So loads of pasta, that sort of stuff. So I do know a bit about it, and I think it's really good for people to look at their diet. I mean, I'm a great one for, you can see I'm not exactly a skinny mini myself, so I'm all for eating good foods, fortunately. But it's making sure that it's good food and try less processed. I mean, I'm a vegetarian, so it makes it a little bit easier, and I try to cut back on the cheese because that's my naughty bit. So that's my on those. But yeah, I mean, it's really good to look at your diet. I think with anything, it's in moderation. It's really going down that route of moderation.
Okay, so Rona's obviously come back, and she said about keeping moving. That's what she keeps saying to Charlie. That's her daughter, but it's getting her through the initial pain to realise it's good for her. Is there any techniques you can recommend that she could use to try and encourage her daughter to move more? Is there any sort of words of wisdom you can offer, or advice, or anything that you can kind of sort of help with her, with that?
I mean, one of the good things is, I mean, the thing is as well, especially with I say young people, but with anybody now, we use our, information technology, all our IT stuff. We use that so much. So it's trying not to use it as much. A bit like I was saying with the food, it's in moderation, and it's trying to move. I know I'm really guilty of it. If I'm planning lectures or doing some research for stuff, I will sit on the computer for hours and suddenly realise, oh my gosh, an hour and a half, 2 hours has gone and I've not moved. And I'm doing exactly what I tell my patients not to do. So it's trying to do things like that, making sure that you don't sit at the computer for a long period of time, that you don't use your iPad. I mean, there's loads of, I've seen a few things that have come up on Facebook and various other things about tech neck, as they call it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And the reality is we've always read, as humans, we get books, we read. The difference is usually if you're reading a book, you tend to look at your book and then you'll look up and do something else, or you'll lie in bed and you'll bring it up to you. Whereas with iPads, laptops, that sort of thing, and certainly with your phone, we're like really in this hunched over position for a long period of time and just get absorbed into it. You go down that rabbit hole almost of things. It's just trying to remember to move from those. So on the computer, 20 minutes, look up in the distance. You don't even have to get up, just literally look away at something in the distance. Once you're on there for 40 minutes or so, to actually get up, go and get a glass of water. Make that so that you don't have it sitting right by you, that you've got to go and do it. So it's things like that. Making yourself get up to turn the television over if you're watching the television. Don't use the remote. It's little things like that, really trying to encourage them to do just those little movements. And as I said, like with the nutrition, thinking little and often, so that you go and have a little snack doing that, so that she will get up to go and do that, but that you go and make it. So half do it so that she doesn't have to do loads of work, but that she still has to make an effort to go and do that. And it really is thinking about, it is very hard when you're in pain for somebody to say to you, you still need to move. But it's just, if you can encourage them to do it and then remind them, get them to keep a diary of when they've been doing that movement and how much better they felt the next day. And it's a lot of, as I said, with the mindfulness, it's thinking about, okay, I know I'm feeling pain, but breathing through it and moving. And it's really one of the ways to try and help.
I mean, the breathing is interesting as well. That's something that my osteopath taught me was when I went to him the one time, and I was having a chronic situation at the time.
Yeah.
And as I'm sure you're very, very well aware, when obviously when I tense up in my neck, obviously everything kind of goes like this.
Yeah, totally.
And so you're sort of like this. And he was sort of saying, I mean, that's exaggerated, but but he was saying, drop your shoulders, obviously.
Yeah.
And then he taught me a very, very simple breathing technique. And he sort of made me obviously do the technique with him. And I think it was, let me get this right, 7 in, 11 out. I think that's the right way around. You breathe out more than you breathe in because you're breathing off your toxins.
You're getting rid of that.
And it doesn't take the pain away, but if you actually concentrate on it, if you lie on the bed or you lie on the sofa or whatever, close your eyes and you literally just focus on the count, 7 in, 11 out, 7 in, 11 out. It really did make a difference. And I was quite surprised because not only did it obviously relax my shoulders, but the pain started to feel more manageable purely because I was relaxing myself. Because when we're in pain, we automatically tense, don't we? That's what we automatically do.
Sorry, my phone will go off in a minute.
That's all right.
Definitely. I usually a very similar one. I would say to people, think of 10 and 10 and try and get as close to 10 in and out. And if you can do a little bit more out, it's brilliant. And I always say to them, try and breathe in through the nose and then out through the mouth. And it's that from the mindfulness point of view, it's that thinking about it exactly as you were saying there. It takes your mind off the pain and you're concentrating on that, on the breathing and trying to get that right. And by doing that helps to calm the whole system down as well. So the sympathetics will start to calm down. So it's a brilliant way of doing it. It's really, if you can do nothing else, it's thinking about that breathing. It makes a big, big difference. Really concentrating on what you're doing, taking that breath in and letting it out. No, it's brilliant. It's a great way. Yeah. Sounds like you've got a good osteopath there.
He gets a lot of money out of me, so I think he's obviously the comment I just put up there, Rona was saying that her daughter's not really into technology, but she can sort of sit around because she's in pain, but she's actually listening to us now, which is great because obviously she can hear what you're saying firsthand. Which is obviously really beneficial. So I think to kind of summarize what you've obviously been saying to Rona throughout the course of this these few minutes is that get her to kind of look at her breathing, try and sort of relax, but also try to make sure that she is moving regardless of the pain.
It's just really gentle movements. You don't have to rush through it. Take it slowly, but realizing yes, you are going to be in pain, but it will get better with that gentle movement in there, and that's part of the thing, is getting that blood flowing, moving around and getting the toxins moving around as such so you can get them out, getting rid of them. And that's part of the having good nutrition and also drinking lots, as much as you can to try and keep yourself really hydrated. We're about 70% water, so we need to keep that in. We need to, keep ourselves nicely hydrated.
Brilliant. And Sandra has got a tip for you, Rona, as well. She says she finds it easier to do her stretches when she has warm muscles. She's fortunate to have a hot tub, which is a very important part of her routine and management. If she does her stretches after this, it's easier. A warm bath should be a good substitute. Or failing that, we're all coming round to Sandra's to jump in her hot tub.
Yeah, sounds like it.
But there's presumably value in that, is there?
Yeah, if muscles are warm, it's easier for you to do it. And it's said, it's even just as simple as you're sitting there, just going from heel to toe on each leg separately. That just gets the blood pumping around in the calf and gets the lymphatics, which is, again, trying to help and take away some of the toxins and stuff in there, takes away the nasty stuff. Just doing that is enough to get some movement in there, because we don't realize, it's not until you really sit back and think you realize how little we might move. I'm real, as you can see, I use my hands and stuff, and I'm a real fidgeter, so I don't often stay still. Other than when I'm doing, as I said, working on the computer. But it is just gentle stuff like that. But certainly, a warm bath to do some good stretches. But even if she's not up to doing that, it's just gentle movement. Even something as simple as Oh, she says, even, here we are, I've got something here, a cloth, just squeezing the cloth and moving that around. You're not doing a great deal, but you're actually now, by me doing that, I'm actually using my arms, I'm using my hands, I'm using up that bit there. So any little movement, it doesn't matter how little it is, as long as it's something. It's better than nothing.
That's brilliant. That's fantastic. Yeah. So Mark's obviously been very helpful and suggested we have a hot tub party. Sandra says I saw that comment coming. Yeah, I don't think we'll be doing that anytime soon. But I mean, that's fantastic. I think, I mean, certainly, obviously, as I said to you, I have experience of osteopaths. So, you know, I obviously do understand a little bit about how it works. One thing that's always fascinated me, and I will wrap this up shortly because obviously we are kind of running over time now, but one thing that's always fascinated me was one osteopath I had. She was trying to get me to feel the layers under the skin.
Right.
If that makes any sense. So she sort of got me to put my sort of fingers on my arm and say, right, press down gently and then wait till you feel the next layer, next layer. And of course I couldn't do it. It just didn't, you know, it just all felt the same to me. But I found that incredible because whenever you go to anybody, but obviously particularly, you know, when I go to my osteopath and I say, oh, it hurts a bit here, and he'll go, what, there? And he'll go straight to it. And I'll be like, oh, yeah. I mean, it really is
magic,
incredible.
you know.
I know. Yeah, I mean, presumably that's your years of training, is it, or do you just kind of have an instinct for it?
No, I mean, it goes to part of it, the training. So basically your palpation, so that touching, the palpation skills will develop over the years. So the more you feel tissue, so the more you see different patients, and part of our training as well, we have to do I think it's a minimum of 1,000 clinical hours. So we'll go into most of the colleges will have a clinic that the students go to, and they practice and work on patients. And as they're doing that, they're getting used to palpating. And there are different exercises you can do to try and feel things. So a really simple one is getting a couple of grains of rice and putting that under some paper and start putting maybe 5 or 6 sheets and start seeing if you can feel it through it, and then taking off each layer. So start with 1 sheet maybe, and you can feel the rice, then put in another couple of bits on top and keep doing it so that you've got it a little bit thicker, and can you still feel it underneath there? So there's loads of different exercises that you can do to develop your palpatory skills. But what it is, it's the more that you start to feel tissues, you'll get used to feeling those different layers and get better at doing it. Yeah.
Yes, that's incredible. Really, really good. Well, I think, I mean, I think I'm sort of happy to wrap up there, unless there's anything else you want to say. I mean, I've really loved having you on. It's been great. Obviously, we've been able to talk about, you know, lots and lots of different things, and hopefully the advice that you've given to Rona in particular, but obviously to the others, I mean, hopefully that will help. I think.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's just not knowing where to turn, I think, isn't it? And you know, and hopefully, you know, she'll be able to maybe try and use some of the techniques you've suggested and see if that can help.
Yeah, that would be good. Try that, give that a go, and good luck with fingers.
And I will obviously, we're in touch anyway, so I will feed back to you and let you know obviously how she gets on, and if she you know, if she has any success from seeing anybody. You know, that would be great for you to know.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so we have gone a little bit over time, but I think it was definitely well worth it. I'm so happy you managed to get your technology sorted and get here in the end. It was an interesting experience, but as I say, it's one of those things. But it's been absolutely fantastic having you on. Thank you ever so much, because I know you've rushed around to get here tonight and you've had problems with the internet and all sorts of different things. So I do really appreciate that, and your advice and everything.
Oh, pleasure.
So yeah, thanks everyone for watching. If you're watching it on replay, I hope you've enjoyed it. Obviously, if you can, please do share this show. You know, anybody that you think might be might be interested in anything that Phyllis has had to say, please do share it with them. Obviously, it's very, very valuable. You can contact Phyllis on Facebook. Have you got a website or anything that I can?
So my Facebook page is at the Garden Studio Osteopath, and My website is www.thegardenstudiosteopath.com.
The garden. I'm sorry. I'm wobbling up and down a bit because I'm just typing this in. So the garden studio
osteopath.com.
Right. So I'm just going to pop that on screen for a sec. Is that right?
Yeah, that looks right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put that in the comments as well for you. But obviously, anybody that wants to know more about Phyllis and what she does, obviously visit her website. And like I said, she is on Facebook.
And if they just put my name, Phyllis Woodfine, I'll come up on it.
Brilliant.
And website even comes up with that as well.
Sandra said, "Thank you, Phyllis. She's so glad she tuned in to listen to you." So yeah,
I'm glad. Thanks, Sandra.
Okay, well, that's it for another week. Thank you so much, everybody. And as I say, thanks so much, Phyllis. It's been really, really good. And I shall look forward to seeing you all again next week. And I'm just trying to think, I think I've got footprint casting next week. I'm going to double check that, though. But so we've got some really great guests coming up. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And I'll look forward to seeing you all again soon. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye.